Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Besides calling for an audit, we know that Dr. Paul's bill makes 5 other changes, fairly simplistic changes, and for the sake of transparency and to put things in a proper perspective, I'm just going to refer to those sections of the code verbatim. Many people in the public would be surprised about what is currently secret, so to speak. The law now reads that under regulations of the Comptroller General shall audit an agency, but may carry out on-site examination of an open insured bank or bank holding company only if the appropriate agency has consented in writing. I'd like your comments because we're not going to have time for you to respond to all my questions now and get answers. I'd like, with the Chairman's permission, to request that you give us specific answers to that question as soon as possible. Why you think that permission of another agency is necessary for the Comptroller General to perform an audit it referred to on a bank. Number 2, current law says, and Dr. Paul's bill is deleting this, audits of the Federal Reserve Board and Federal Reserve Bank may not include transactions for or with a foreign central bank, government of a foreign country, or non-private international financing organization. Now, I'd like you to answer in writing, and you can do it verbally if you have time, but I think my questioning will probably take the remainder of my time, how this could possibly hurt the function of the Fed. And if not on a daily basis, maybe with just a short cooling off period, as the Chairman referred to, but these should not be even potentially eternally secret actions. The next thing it does, number 3, is it shall not include deliberations, decisions, or actions on monetary policy matters, including discount window operations, reserves of member banks, securities credit, interest or deposits, and open market operations. I mean, it astounds me that anybody would think that that would be harmful to become public information. Number 4, transactions made under the direction of the Federal Open Market Committee. You know, how is that information going to harm the financial security of our nation if it's no longer off limits? And finally, number 5, a part of a discussion or a communication among or between members of the Board of Governors and officers and employees of the Federal Reserve System relating to the aforementioned clauses 1 and 3 of this subsection. I mean, the idea that any of that must be eternally secret for the financial security of this nation is fairly incredulous to me, and you can start now if you like responding to those items. But those are where the fork meets the grits here, so to speak. These are the things that the bill actually talks about. You know, we've gone and we talked in some platitudes here and some wherefores and whereases, but that's the real basic elements of Dr. Paul's bill.
So if I could address at least one of the points. You mentioned the limitations on disclosing information about open banks.
Well, we should probably start with number 1 right off the bat. Why do you have to have the appropriate agency's permission for the Comptroller General to perform an audit?
Of open banks.
Yes.
Yes. And the concern there is that disclosure of information about the operations of an open bank, so any number of banks that are not experiencing difficulties, would be misunderstood and cause difficulties for the bank, a bank that is open and operating and that requires the public's confidence. And so consulting with the primary regulator of the bank, which is responsible for examining the bank, and whose reports by law are not made public, is designed to ensure that misleading or mistaken information about the health of that bank isn't released. It's meant to protect the bank, which is an open institution, and it's only dealing with open institutions in your example. It's to protect that bank from
just to take a second. Do you not think that if we have maybe had some audits and they'd been public 2 or 3 years ago, we might have not ended up in the crisis we're in now? Did the secrecy not protect some of the misbehavior by some of the banking industry, do you think?
I personally don't think if GAO had audited the investment banks or the large banks in the United States that GAO would have been able to stop the crisis any better than the other agencies.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Manzullo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a co-sponsor of H.R. 1207. Hope that it proceeds to the floor without being watered down too much. The big concern of the American people really has to go to what happened in September of last year when the Secretary of Treasury came to the members of Congress and said he needed immediately, overnight, $787 billion to buy out troubled assets. Otherwise, the world was going to collapse. And not 1 cent has been spent of that money on buying out troubled assets. We're going on for a year now. People are still waiting. And members of Congress, and I voted against that, are still wondering why they voted on it. But let me ask you this question, Mr. Alvarez. Whenever the Fed gets involved, for example, in pumping money into AIG, et cetera, is that actually reflected as part of the national debt?
No, sir, it's not part of the national debt. It is fully disclosed on our balance sheet, and it shows up on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, but it's not part of the outstanding debt.
So the, so it's monetized. You just print money. Is that correct?
Not exactly, and this is an area where, again, I'm not expert. The Federal Reserve does a variety of transactions to support its lending activities. It lends basically, it has government securities that it can sell in order to raise the funds to make loans. But that's not monetizing the debt.
So you're saying that for all the money that's been pumped in to these various institutions, that the Fed and the Treasury, ostensibly, has sufficient reserves to back that up in case of a collapse?
So I believe the Federal Reserve does, yes.
One of the other problems, in fact, I've got a constituent from Cary, Illinois, who's followed this very closely along with lots of other constituents. People are really distrustful of the Fed based upon the cloak of secrecy that takes place. But the areas that are of most importance dealing with monetary policy and the discount window are the two most important parts of the Fed. In fact, on page 6 of your testimony, it says Congress purposefully and for good reason chose to exclude from GAO review only 2 highly sensitive areas: monetary policy deliberations, decisions, and actions, including open market and discount window, and the other is Federal Reserve transactions dealing with foreign countries. So you have actions and transactions that are excluded from GAO review. GAO review. It would take an act of Congress, would it not, in order to go into these 2 areas?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's what H.R. 1207 attempts to do. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
So the very Congress, but the very body that sets the policy of review, would you not agree, also has the authority to change that policy?
Oh, absolutely, sir.
And so members of Congress, you would agree, who are very concerned with trying to track all this money, believe that by having more transparency, that the American people will have a better idea as to where their taxpayers' dollars are spent. Wouldn't you agree that the American people have a tremendous amount of interest in this?
This is certainly an area for Congress to consider. We're here simply providing our views on what the ramifications would be of that kind of congressional action, and we're concerned about the effects of making the change that 1207 would make. But it is clearly a decision for the Congress.